Hey everybody, KC here. So this week's innovation conversation is going to be a little bit different. You may remember a couple of weeks ago I told you about how I was at the GMDC Retail Tomorrow mid-year meetup in Dallas. And one of the things we did while we were there is we did a live innovation conversation. It was live, but I was the only one in the room. Tom Furphy couldn't make it to Dallas because of some business obligations that he had, but he was able to join us via Zoom. So we had the audience, we had Tom on screen, I was there, I had things I wanted to talk about, the audience had things that it wanted to talk about. As we talked about the nature of innovation, the whole notion of why the acceleration took place during the pandemic and what that means going forward. We had a lot of specific things we wanted to talk about. And so this innovation conversation is going to look a little bit different because you're going to see me and you're going to see me with the audience. You're going to get all sorts of audience participation. And I think you'll find it interesting. It's a little longer than our average innovation conversation just because of the nature of it. But I think it's really worth sticking with it. I will also just mention as a side note that this will be our last innovation conversation, at least on our regular schedule for the summer. Usually during the summer, Tom and I just do it a little bit more casually. We don't necessarily do it every other week. It sort of depends on what's going on, if it's something we want to talk about. But if you've listened to Tom and me over the years, you know that we always have something we want to talk about. So at any rate, I hope you enjoy this very different innovation conversation, and let me know what you think. This is the Innovation Conversation. I'm Kevin Coop.
And I'm Tom Furphy.
And so we're doing a little something different today. Normally you see Tom and I do the Innovation Conversation every other week. It's just the two of us talking on Morning Newsbeat. But today I'm actually at the GMDC Retail Tomorrow mid-year meetup in Dallas, Texas. And what we're going to do today is a conversation, an innovation conversation that includes this terrific looking audience. There you go. Give yourselves a round of applause. And this is a great opportunity because everybody in this room and all of the companies that they represent are highly focused on the future, hence the name Retail Tomorrow. And so that's what we're going to talk about for the next 45 or 50 minutes. I think it's going to be really interesting. The topics that we've already talked about here have been fascinating, and we're going to sort of build on some of that in the things we talk about over the next few minutes. I will point out to those of you who are looking in and you're looking at a maskless room, we're all vaccinated and we're in Texas. So all is good. You don't have to worry about our health. We're in pretty good shape. So, Tom, the first thing I want to talk a little bit about is to build on something that the wonderful and far-thinking futurist Nancy Giordano, who's sitting right over here, talked about yesterday. And Nancy made the observation, and I think this is absolutely right on, that we all patted ourselves on the back for the past 15, 16 months about all the acceleration that has taken place in the industry. But Nancy made the observation that, in fact, pretty much every acceleration we saw was of things that were already happening. You know, more people had click and collect, but click and collect happened. More people were doing things that they were already engaged in anyway, and they actually innovated because they didn't think of it as innovation, they thought about it as survival. But there wasn't that transformational innovation that ended up being a total game changer. There wasn't a thing that before the pandemic we said, we know about it. So my question to you is, when you think about innovations, that's something that it is not really in the marketplace in terms of being used popularly. When you go to bed at night and you dream of these things, and I hope you dream of other things as well, what would that thing be?
Well, that is a really good question and a very good true point made by Nancy. I mean, I think we spent, the last year and a half through the pandemic was the customer pushing the industry to a new place, not the industry, carrying the customer to a new place. And the industry needed to make that move, right? It forced them to, get better at the basic blocking and tackling of e-commerce. It forced them to, offer better web and mobile experiences. It forced them to, be better at delivering and better at pickup. So I think the industry needed all of that. But you're right, there was no transformational technology or capability delivered during that time. I will say, and we look at a lot of technologies in our venture firm here. Some we build, some come our way, and we evaluate and we ideate with, and we help bring to market. And I will say that I don't know if this is going to depress the group, but I'm not seeing that kind of whiz bang, super transformational. This is going to change your life, kind of single piece of technology or single capability. But what I am seeing and what I think will be truly transformational is deep and widespread application of true machine learning and AI to the retail experience, right? And that goes all the way from, the customer's, original kind of point of inspiration around their shopping trip, through their shopping trip and interaction with, with the store, with products, all the way through, how they receive those products, be it click and collect, be it delivery, either be a gig worker on a point-to-point, kind of on-demand delivery, or via route delivery, or via drone. So I think you're going to see that really impact the customer journey. I think you're also going to see better application of machine learning impact how stores are run, how store associates interact with customers and have information that they're available to them to help guide customers, how in-store fulfillment and logistics work, and then ultimately how fulfillment either be through micro fulfillment or other external nodes to the store, how that kind of works all the way through how deliveries are assembled and routed and sent to customers. So I think you're going to see an acceleration in kind of all of that over the next, I would say couple years. There aren't many retailers quite yet there fully jumping into this. But what you've seen during the pandemic is retailers really had to get religion around this. So they've done a lot of, like replatforming of their e-commerce stack. They've done a lot of rethinking about, how they bring inventory in and how they pick and pack, for e-commerce. They've had to really kind of think about what are the kind of front end capabilities that we want to put in front of the customer to give them inspiration. So there's been a lot of positioning, I think, for retailers to be ready for this with a platform that can be, extensible into these capabilities. And there is a lot of innovation out there at all these various points. I don't think any single innovation will be itself transformational, but I think the brands and retailers that are able to configure these new capabilities driven by machine learning, because machine learning done right can be incredibly powerful. And I think that that's really going to be what's going to change. I think this is going to change the game here over the next couple of years. Long answer, so I apologize.
No, that's right. I wonder, does that mean, I've often observed about the industry that I think that the industry tends to play small ball in terms of innovation. And I don't necessarily say that as a criticism. I like a baseball team that singles, doubles, steals bases. I don't need home runs to make a baseball team work for me. Is that what, in essence, we have here? It's singles, doubles, stealing a base, trying to move it that way as opposed to always aiming for the fences? Is that a fair metaphor?
I think for incumbent retailers, that is probably true. It's hard for them to swing to the fence. They have a lot of infrastructure. They've made a lot of capital investments, to bring that infrastructure forward, into this kind of new digitally enhanced, world that we're in. So I think there is a bunch of that. Yeah, I mean, I think there will also be new retail models that we see. Whether it's more retailers doing just walk out, whether it's new delivery only. You're seeing a number of. We talked about this on Innovation Conversation this week. Some delivery only models. So I think you'll see the less incumbent retailers, or upstarts with some more home run swings. But I think existing retailers will be, just having really good quality at bats, getting on base and scoring some runs.
Well, and isn't that in some ways the challenge for lack of a better term, legacy retailers who are doing the blocking and I'm mixing my sports metaphors here, but doing the blocking and tackling of the everyday retailing, they don't think in terms of hitting the home run, but they've got to compete with a company like Amazon, which is able to aim for home runs, has the money to spend on home run hitters and they don't, even if they don't always produce.
Yeah, I say though, if you look at Amazon through the past, I mean, the Amazon business model itself was a home run, right? Because it was just not really in place at any kind of scale when it started. But if you look at the various innovations that Amazon has brought to market, I would say like the big swings to the fence may be Kindle, it may have been Echo. I don't think the stuff they're doing, I mean, I guess inventing the cloud, yeah, that was kind of a big deal, but it really wasn't that big of a swing because it was all infrastructure Amazon had to build and configure for themselves anyway. So adding the ability to face that to the public and then defray the cost of it, that's like a really good double. That's not a home run. When you think through the things that they've done, and when we built Subscribe and Save back in the day, right? You look at it now, it's like, man, that was really transformational. It was, but internally at Amazon, it didn't feel like a big swing. It was new and it was innovative, but when you thought about building it kind of brick by brick, it didn't really seem like that much of a home run. So, I think Amazon, you look at the stuff they're doing in health today with telehealth and other things, and you look at their move into the pharmacy business, and you look at, the things they're doing around there, you look at things they're doing in stores. None of that stuff is home run, right? All of that stuff is just, it's a really innovative culture that rewards risk taking, or maybe rewards swinging at that slightly outside pitch, right, to hit it down the right field line to maybe get a triple. So I don't know. I think Amazon gets credit for home runs when those runs are really manufactured more than just smashing it out of the park.
I do think, though, to follow up on the brick by brick metaphor, as we do nothing but metaphors here today, the people who built the pyramids probably saw it brick by brick. It was only when it was done and they looked back and they stood back and went, "Holy moly! Look at what we just built!" Right? Yeah. Sometimes I don't think you see it because you're close up. So let me bring the audience into it. Sterling Hawkins. Do we have a microphone? Here we go.
Here comes a big idea.
There you go.
Kevin Coop. Tom, good to see you.
Good to see you, Sterling.
What's your right? Give us one. What do you dream about? What do you think? Whoa, that would change the world.
So I'm not dreaming retail, unfortunately. But I did. I was thinking about
I'm not sure that's unfortunate, man.
I was thinking about it from your question yesterday, kind of setting us all up for today. And I thought, you know what I would love? 3D printing at the next level of food. Yeah, I'm a single guy. I live by myself. I don't love to cook. I buy almost every meal prepared. Why isn't there a machine I can put on my counter and create protein at macro levels that I want with the right level of protein and fats and carbs and everything else? I would love that.
Okay. Hand the mic to Nancy because she's going, yeah, I love that.
So it's called the Foodini.
Tell everybody who you are, Nancy.
3D food printer. I can never say it clearly.
Nancy, tell everybody who you are for the audience at home.
Hi, everyone. Nancy Giordano, very opinionated futurist who spends a lot of time in this world with the people who are doing it. So just know the U.S. government, the U.S. Army has been testing 3D printed customized food for soldiers since 2016. So the technology is on the way. Your dreams will come true. And someday there'll be a food printer that actually, I believe, will test your nutritional composition like where you are today. It will know your calendar, what you've got going on, whether or not you've got a sports practice or whether or not a big meeting. It will know how well you slept. It will know your stress levels and will print it out specifically for that.
Well, I can't wait for that. Here's the thing. We've been talking about 3D printed everything for maybe a decade, longer, somewhere in there. Like where are the retail products available that I can actually buy? Do you have a sense of like when that will happen? Is that 5 years out, 3 years out?
Hand to the mic.
It goes back to that exponential curve that we showed yesterday, where it's like there's a bit of a hype and then it doesn't quite come, and then we go, oh, it's never going to happen. And then all of a sudden, the right confluence of technology and business model and whatever compute power needs to happen or affordability, and push, it'll go there. So I do think if anyone has watched, God, they're showing Netflix. Anyway, you see the 3D printer there, and it's got like recipes that come in from Jamie Oliver, and they print out their steak right there. You can see it in the show. So I think we're just on the verge of it.
In the Army tests that they're doing of this, how does it taste? Because that's what I always.
The real connoisseurs at the Army, huh?
Well, you know, does it taste like K rations, or does it taste good?
Oh, again, I don't know.
Okay.
I tasted it. So
Because that's always my question. Like yesterday, one of the things Nancy showed us was this partnership between Toyota and Pizza Hut for autonomous delivery.
Domino's.
No, it's
you're
Pizza
right.
Hut.
Yeah,
Pizza Hut.
you're right. Sorry.
For the purpose of what I'm going to say, it doesn't really matter.
Credit.
Because I look at that and I say, well, that's great in terms of autonomous delivery, but how's it going to taste? Because is Pizza Hut really pizza? Silence behind me. I thought I would get at least a chuckle. But right, in other words, I worry that we're at some level, those kinds of things dumb down food quality for mass production, and that becomes less important than the delivery system. And what
right, that's less about the delivery and more about the quality of the food. I do think autonomous delivery will take big steps forward in the next couple of years. And I know we've done, I've participated in the neuro test that Kroger's doing in Arizona, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun to watch that little guy come down the street and bring your stuff, and it kind of has its own little kind of element of theater and excitement, in how it works. And so I think that's, and it's obviously a lot less expensive for Kroger to deliver that way, when you do that at scale. So I think that kind of stuff is cool, and that kind of stuff in food delivery, even beyond groceries, I think is really promising. In the kind of device manufactured food space, there was a company called, I believe it was Soylent a few years ago, that did that.
Yes.
And
by the way, worst name ever for a company for anybody who's ever seen Soylent Green.
yeah, pretty bad. But I know, that just, it ended up not being successful for a variety of reasons. So, I know that maybe that's perfect for Sterling though, so he can go out and, get off on his run and his mountain climb and get back to the gym.
So the interesting thing about about 3D printing is it seems to me at some level it allows people to customize things to a greater degree than they ordinarily would. And I know Andrew, if we can get the microphone over to Andrew, has some thoughts about that, because he and I were chatting earlier. This is what he dreams about at night, or maybe.
Yeah, I think.
Introduce yourself, Andrew.
I'm Andrew McQuilkin. So I've been fascinated by what's been going on with the pandemic. Historically, pandemics not only make social change, they make architectural change. And there have been major movements have come out of pandemics. Certainly when the swine flu came, green building, the idea about making healthy buildings came out of this. But what we did is we actually did a customer survey, shopper survey of 1,000 shoppers in the specialty brands realm. We actually did it just before the pandemic. So we ended up with a benchmark.
Right.
And so we've now done our third survey. We got another one coming up in July. And what's interesting is tracking with these 10 questions that we're asking, the differences along it. We saw things come down that are going back up again. We saw things that were low that went up and then came back down again. But there's one that we tracked that was low that went up and up, and we predict it's going to continue to go up. And that's the idea of preference, shopper preference. So we asked shoppers, where do they prefer to shop? Which channels? And this came out of a conversation from Retail Tomorrow with Dennis Campbell of Harvard Business School, was talking about, the future of retail is really distribution and fulfillment, not experience. I said, well, I challenge that. What were they looking for? And it ends up that because it's continued to track up, originally 11% had no preference for how they shopped, right? And now it's up to almost 30%. We think it's going to continue as we go forward, even up to 40 to, and at some point, 50% of shoppers are going to have no preference for which channel they're going to shop, which means retailers cannot predict the channels they're going to shop in. They're going to be much more fluid. And so if that's the case, the decisions that shoppers are making, the behavioral decisions they're making about where to shop, is a lot of it's going to be emotionally based.
Right.
So we think, the idea of personalization is going to go to a whole new level. Whoever can get a hold of that idea and leverage all the current technologies and new technologies, like most disruptors start at the bottom in times like this, right? We don't even, they're just being birthed now, the disruptors for retail moving forward. So how can you take advantage of personalization and understand that it's maybe not just predictive analytics, but prescriptive analytics that are going to help the retailers get out in front. But right now, the shopper is in charge, right? And the phrase I coined is omni-choice, right? The idea that they now control everything. And so you got to be able to get out ahead of them by collecting more data and understand where they're going. Because I think that's going to be the future. Because if you want them to go to bricks and mortar, or you want them to use the robot, experience that you're going to give them, the emotional quotient you're going to give them as part of that brand is really going to, differentiate one retailer from the other.
Well, that's interesting because you still have a lot of retailers out there who trumpet the fact that they're embracing omni-channel. And when you and I were talking earlier, one of the things you said is
that's a given.
Yeah. If you're not, you're dead.
You were dead in the pandemic if you didn't have those options.
So omni-choice being the next.
Yeah, shoppers in charge.
Tom, what do you think?
I would argue that personalization done well is an incredibly emotional experience, right? Personalization done well, where you're appealing to that individual at a level that doesn't go as far as being creepy, but if you can appeal to them at a level that, provides inspiration, insight into products, and saves them time and is, convenience and assistive to them, to an extent that they didn't feel possible. That's incredibly emotional, and that can very, intensely impact the bond between the retailer and that customer. And then channels just become, that's kind of where fulfillment comes into play then. And then channels become, the customer's choice of the day of which way works best for them. Going into the store for further inspiration, further sensory experiences, picking it up on my way by, having it delivered, having it on demand delivered based on my need. That's retailers are going to have to get good at all of that, because if retailers, don't respond and can't offer, at least a number of those, they're going to be pretty limited in their appeal, I think, going forward.
Well, I don't know if you agree with me, but I've always thought that the notion of channels and format is a complete industry construct. I don't think that consumers ever say, I'm going to the convenience store to buy a convenience item. They just go to the place that they know has what they want. Yes, we have out here. Don't forget to ID yourself.
Hi guys, Lou Fada here. I'm glad you brought that up, Andrew, because personalization is one of the things that keeps me up awake at night as a manufacturer. Trying to figure out where the level goes to in terms of how much you can personalize the experience with a brand, right? At some point, you're a mass marketed brand, and now you have to dive into what matters to each of the individual customers or consumers. So I get a little nervous about that. As much as I want it, I think it was the two boxes we talked about, fear and frustration, or fear and opportunity. The better we do that as a brand, the better we can elevate the experience for the consumer to stay loyal to us. But boy, that's going to be tough to do on a mass scale with multiple consumers. So I don't exactly know how we do that, but that kind of keeps me awake at night.
So what do you manufacture?
E.T. Brown is a company that manufactures polymers, creams, lotions, showers, lip balms. It's skincare products.
So give me an example of something that you think that consumers might want customized that at the moment the infrastructure is not built to do it.
Well, it's interesting. One of the areas of opportunity is in this business called textured hair. Okay, so consumers who have different levels of curls and texture in their hair are looking for different products. And there's a brand at retail now that has it. Literally, you go to retail and you say, I need this for that and this for that, and you kind of almost concoct it on your own. So I don't know what the brand is, and I'm not going to give it a plug either, because it scares the heck out of me. But that realization is very present, that it's, okay, if my hair is this way today, I need a little something different.
Right.
And so we have to answer that question on a little different scale, which is individual personalization scaled, I guess is the way to look at it. And that's kind of scary.
Well, and Andrew, isn't there a Roach Brothers store that you designed that actually has a machine that allows you to concoct your own blend of olive oil? Isn't it? I mean, if I'm recalling correctly.
Well, that's, yeah, the Roach Brothers in Watertown,
Right.
Massachusetts. Yeah, one of the things we strategized is, you know, what products and services can they bring to this next generation format they had. So we brainstormed a lot of different things, and they ended up coming up with their head merchant that this is one of the things they thought that would be viable for this demographic and this community that this store was going into.
Yeah, that's it. It's interesting because I always think we're not even personalizing the easy stuff. And my pet peeve is with like car companies, right? So I have a Mustang, but let's say I want to buy a new Mustang, and I want it to be dark green. I can't get that. And you would think it would really be easy for Ford to say, well, here's the deal. If you want a dark green convertible Mustang, it's going to take 2 extra weeks and it's going to cost you an extra $1,000, but you can have it exactly the way you want. And there's no car company out there that does it. And you would think that would be one of the easiest things in the world that they could do. Yes, we have a...
Yeah. Hi,
Identify yourself, please.
Dave Jenkins, Iterate Studio Software. To address Lou's question about how to personalize on a mass brand thing, and also to address Sterling's issue about the 3D printer, Sterling's idea actually answers Lou's idea, in that we work with some beauty clients, and they are experimenting with 3D printers in the stores to print your own lipstick with your own colors. Now imagine a 3D printer that mixes the right amount of mint paste and whatever, where I'm dialing my own personal toothpaste because I like this flavor, whatever. Imagine that for the kids. Imagine me able to dial in the right amount of lemon scent, alcohol, and detergent for my own hardwood flooring cleaning products, whatever. These can all be either dialed in at the store at first, but eventually at the home, where again, we're now just drop shipping raw cartridges like we do with an ink printer, you know, where you buy the cyan, the yellow, and the black, whatever. Imagine just essentially buying packets of lemon scent, alcohol, and, you know, grit or whatever that would go into the cleaner. And then I'm dialing my own cleaning products, right? That's within 2 years maybe.
And some of this I suppose in certain cases, like cars, you could charge extra, but some of that, it seems to me, it can just be built into the price. It used to make me crazy. You go to CVS, and if you need to you're getting medicine for your kids, they'd say, well, for an extra $3, we can add flavoring to it so it tastes good. And my argument was always, well, wait a minute, you're telling me it tastes crappy, but you can make it taste good so my kid will actually take the medicine he or she needs to take, but it's going to cost me extra? I just throw it in. How expensive can it be? But if, you know, so I think they should have gone in a different direction, because that becomes a differentiator from Walgreens. Yeah, go. Let's get the microphone over to Nancy.
Lou said something that's really important. I want y'all to hear it, because it's also, and it goes back to prescriptive. It's not just that I know that my hair is weird, but that actually it looks at the weather report. It knows the humidity levels. It knows what it is that I need that day. When I pull it into my little container, and there was actually a product that was considered one of the inventions of the year last year from L'Oreal that is at home, the 3D dispenser. But I put my hand underneath the dispenser, and it gives me what it is that I need without me having to know all that information, right? That's the next level of AI meets bioengineering, meets the machine at my house, meets the need that I get filled. So
to what extent does this then become, this kind of innovation, though, become the purview of big companies with deep pockets, and put smaller, more independent companies that don't have those kinds of deep pockets, make it very hard for them to keep up in terms of innovation? Because that's the one thing that always worries me, that you know, and the independent sector tends to be threatened anyway as big companies get bigger. Is the level of innovation required mean that small companies either are not going to be able to compete or are going to have to somehow merge and do different things just to be able to keep up? Tom.
Well, small companies generally have the edge in agility, right? Because you can make a decision, you can move faster toward that. But smaller companies, I think you just have to do a lot more partnering in this area, right? Go find that emerging company that has investment dollars behind it, that is out leading these innovations, you know, and then work with them to bring that innovation to market, you know, either for your brands or in your you know, in your retail environment. You know, I will say these things all sound awesome. You know, changing consumer behavior en masse is not easy. You know, you look at what Amazon's done for, you know, a decade plus now with like their Dash replenishment platform, right? You know, Amazon's worked with big, you know, well-funded manufacturers, you know, across, you know, the house. So think your washer and dryer, think your coffee maker, think, you know, scales and packaging in your pantry, right? At enabling, you know, internet connected devices to do replenishment. You know, now in that case, it's not necessarily personalization, but it's at least personalized consumption. And even Amazon, with all the money it's had behind it and all the marketing behind it and all the ability for customers to get it, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny business inside Amazon. Now, again, it's you know, it's kind of home run thinking, but it's, you know, it's certainly taken a while for that to emerge. Not to say that none of this stuff should be experimented with and should be brought out. I think it's all really important, but you know, I think if you're any player in this, you also have to balance the equation of my investment in this, you know, novel capability, and then the likelihood of mass adoption of that, and then what that looks like. Like, you know, are you going to change consumer behavior for one use case of one product in their home, or you know, is that a step on the way to a more transformational, you know, change in experience where, you know, we can, you know, impact and change customer behavior in a way that enables these innovations to flourish.
Sterling, you have a thought?
I do. I think it's important to remember that innovation always isn't just technology. It seems like that's kind of getting lumped together here. I look at innovation as any significant positive change. So it can certainly be technology. I think that's most often how we talk about it, but it could be in terms of training or finances or anything else. And a good example of that, at least in the grocery world, is what Trader Joe's has done. You know, we all say e-commerce is cost of entry, and for the most part it is, but Trader Joe's, I think, is doing great without it, given I want them to have it, right? But they've innovated more along the lines of customer experience and new products. Another example is a wholesaler is working with is starting to change how they're structuring their finances. They were acting as a bank, and now they're changing where those dollars flow and where they hang on to them and where they don't. No new technology is needed. They're not even making a big cash investment in the whole thing, but all of a sudden they're 10% more profitable out of the gate. So as we look at innovation, I think we can take a broader lens to say, well, sure, we might need technology, but do we have to have it?
Well, and this goes back to something Andrew was talking about, was the experiential nature of especially in the supermarket business, right? Where there are small companies, you know, I mean, today we're going to go to Central Market, right? Which is about which is a complete experience. You know, I always talk about Dorothy Lane Market, you know, Bristol Farms, Metropolitan Market in Seattle, Stu Leonard's in Connecticut. I mean, these are companies that, by and large, had a really good. I mean, everybody in the food business had a pandemic because they just had to open their back doors, bring products in, and watch it go out the front door. But these are companies that did exceptionally well because they had a differentiated offering that resonated during a tough time. But they were doing well before the pandemic, and they're going to do well after the pandemic. Patrick.
All right, Patrick Spear. If you ask the question of, you know, what do you dream about or what do you want? I want and. earlier this morning, we were talking about data, AI, machine learning, and I said data begets data. As we learn more, we want more, or we think of new questions to ask. So when I think about what I want and. So I want a tech-enabled experience with that local offering that I want to get from Amazon, but I'd like it from others as well. So as we learn more about what an Amazon experience could be, or what a tech-enabled experience could be at retail, that's what I want, and I want it from the local folks. I want it from the national players. Yes, Amazon's an option. And I said, well, show of hands, how many people in here are Amazon Prime members? Yeah, okay. Because that's a fair question, right? Because given that we're all supporting that platform, what does that mean for our industry? So I'm looking, Kevin and Tom, for the and. How do I get that tech-enabled experience at a retailer that I really enjoy visiting, the legacy brick and mortar experience?
I have another question, and this actually will bring me to a question that was asked by somebody in the audience. So pretty much everybody's a Prime member. How many people here are members of Subscribe and Save, have at least one Subscribe and Save solution? Okay. That doesn't surprise me usually, because people in the industry don't want to be subscribing to Amazon's products. But one of the questions we got from the audience was they wanted us to talk a little bit about retailer movement to auto replenishment. And he says, I have witnessed retailer conversations go from it being an intriguing opportunity now to being one as a competitive threat. And we should put this in context. Auto replenishment, in addition to the fact that you led the team that created Subscribe and Save for Amazon, Tom, this is a subject dear to your heart at the moment.
Well, yeah, it's dear to my heart. We've invested a lot of money in it. So it's dear to my heart and dear to my bank account, or my wallet. Yeah, the reason we did Subscribe and Save in the first place at Amazon was we were just looking for a way that we could differentiate, a way that we could provide a unique value to our customer that would draw them to us, keep them with us, grow their basket over time, and be something that they couldn't find elsewhere, right? So at the time, there was no product subscription anywhere else. So it was a very customer-centric kind of motivation behind why we did it. And we built it, and it was fine. It's a basic capability, and it for a few years in there drove the majority of our CPG business at Amazon. Today, it's about 40%, but still $18 billion last year inside Amazon. So, at Amazon, we had that view that, customers like to kind of set and forget the replenishment of products they use on a regular basis, right? And, it's just like putting your bills on bill pay, right? You just don't want to think about it. It's a convenience. It's more about the utility of it, right? You find that brand, that product that serves your need. You develop that kind of emotional bond, frankly, with that product, but then you just put it on that and forget about it. When we rolled that forward to the modern day and started Replenium, we brought together the historical kind of capability of subscription and added a whole bunch of machine learning to make it way more personalized and enable you as a household to put lots more products in there. And, we've seen the industry over the last few years, a couple things. One, I think most retailers now, given the size of Amazon's center store business, kind of have religion that they say, you know what, I can see how Amazon has taken some proportionate share of my volume out of center store over the last few years, and of course how that's impacted my profitability. And so there's some religion there, but then there's also, all right, as I move my e-commerce capabilities forward, which we were forced to do, as we said earlier, during the pandemic, now I've got an e-commerce platform that I own that is, I can add capabilities to, and we're seeing, it's been a long time coming, but we're seeing most retailers now have either they're implementing auto replenishment or it is specified on their roadmap. So it went from kind of this existential threat, yeah, Amazon's doing it, to, ooh, I think I can measure it. And of course, Nielsen and others now are measuring that, so retailers are actually able to see what they're losing out. And so now they're saying, all right, we have to offer that both as a defensive capability, but then also as something that just makes the shopping experience better, right? Let's take the repetitive purchases, put those on autopilot as well as we can with good visibility and control of the customer, and then free up the customer's bandwidth and capacity to go discover new products, right? To go try new things and learn about new things and use that versus kind of the rote ordering. So a bit of a long answer on the evolution there. But yeah, I think that's a great example where machine learning and capability and continuing to build on the digital experience, they're all kind of converging now, and you're seeing it as much more of a have to have and a plan to have capability out there.
Well, if a traditional retailer could move 30-40% of their center store to a subscription auto replenishment model, that frees up a lot of space and energy where they can start doing things like personalization, figuring out how to deal with things like 3D printing of food. Suddenly you start to be able to, it seems to me, be able to pay more attention to the kind of the other innovative things that could also differentiate them.
Yeah, and auto replenishment done well, it can handle that kind of variation. When we talk about even producing something locally, either at the store for delivery or in the home, right? There's this knowledge in the platform that the replenishment of that product is due to come up, and then you can have personalization around that, help the customer configure that. So there may be a certain formula or a certain scent of a product or whatever that is your choice now, but on replenishment you certainly can have give the customer the ability to modify as that goes. I think that auto replenishment for a brand is that nice combination of enabling personalization, particularly on the front end, right, to find that right product, to generate that discovery and generate that initial conversion to purchase, and then you put it on that annuity of auto replenishment. You can always change variety as you go, but as a brand, you got that customer onto your product, into your brand. You can variate from there. Just don't lose them. Let them go off to a competitor.
Well, sure. I mean, I was an early subscribe and save customer, and I've always said it doesn't just create cement my relationship with Amazon. It also cements my relationship with the 20 or so brands that are on my list. Great example is we had Clorox wipes on our subscribe and save list before the pandemic, and we didn't get them every month because there was a shortage. We got them a lot, and we've still got like boxes and boxes of Clorox wipes in our basement. So we may have to delay our next shipment. But the creation of a relationship, using innovation to create a relationship, to me is like hugely important. And that's one of the things that worries me about, as a lot of retailers, and we've gone down the Instacart path and talked about that a lot on the innovation conversation. But it was one of the questions we got was from one of the people who was here, who wrote in about how he said, my daughter is down in Florida for the long weekend and she ordered something from Costco on Instacart. The thing, we're not members, and she didn't have to enter a member ID to place the order. Instacart had delivered it quickly, but how is that good for Costco if suddenly you can access all of Costco's products without having to be a member? And we know that they get a lot of their profit is in their membership fees. And this is the same thing that happens with, ButcherBox just announced that they're going to start delivering via Instacart. And instead of investing in innovations, I worry that instead of investing in innovations on their own, what they're doing is looking for the quick fix that could end up interrupting the relationship, disintermediating the traditional retailer from the relationship with the customer. Does anybody want to challenge me on that? Anybody think I'm wrong? Oh, I love that. That never happens at home. There you go, Andrew.
Well, I'm not going to say you're wrong. It's Andrew McQuilkin. But I have history in the past of a toy retailer who back in the 90s, early 2000s, was looking at creating their own internet to be able to sell their products online. Even worked on the firm I was at, the offices for this new .com for this toy company. It ends up, they pulled the plug just before construction, and they went with a company called Amazon to be their partner to deliver their toy products, and that company eventually went bankrupt. Right. So again, it's the foresight to know, should I own it myself and be able to control my destiny? Or do I do the short-term fix?
Right.
And so I've seen a lot of retailers make some decisions for the short-term fix, not realizing there's a bigger long-term game that somebody like Amazon had. And I remember back in early 2000s, I was at an event where the head of architecture for Walmart was asked a question after a presentation, who do you fear? Early 2000s. He said a company called Amazon. So they knew back then what they needed to do.
I assume the company you're talking about is Toys R Us.
I'm not saying that.
Because they went the same path as Borders, right? Borders who said, oh, we don't need to do that. We'll let them innovate there. We'll just do the traditional thing.
Yeah, just to build off of that. And
Name. Okay, tell us who you are for the folks at home.
Hey, Tom, Bob Richardson. Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, Bob.
I wish I was up in your neighborhood out to eat someplace, okay? But neither here nor there.
Soon.
No, I think we mentioned Instacart because there's this love-hate relationship with Instacart. Instacart has actually filled a lot of void for grocery retailers on that delivery option. Now, again, I don't necessarily like them because I don't have a relationship with them. Us as a manufacturer, we don't necessarily like them, vice versa, but they have filled this void of delivery that no one else is doing. And quite frankly, they're doing it quite well. So, but once again, and delivery to the retailer, if he's doing it himself, that's very costly. So putting an interim person in there. So again, if Michelle was to buy it, or you want to buy it and pay up for it, good. But at least that vehicle's there.
And
Great.
just
You know,
to be clear,
they,
go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
I would say one thing Instacart's done very well, in addition to solving that retailer need, is solve the customer need. They have a ton of customers. You know, I look at, you know, my kids, their friends, like they don't think twice about, you know, they don't think about going to the grocery store. They go onto their phone. They don't even think about going to Chipotle. Well, they do Chipotle maybe in some cases, but you know, they're going to their phone to do DoorDash, right? That next generation of shopper is engaged on the convenience of these services and the intimate connection they have with them via their phone. And you know, that's a big threat to the industry. And I do agree with you, Bob, that you know, these retailers needed that, right? They didn't have, well, most of them didn't have the ability to deliver on demand or to route deliver, you know, when they all of a sudden needed to. So, you know, Instacart definitely provided that, but you know, it's like buyer beware on the retailer side in this case. You do need to have a long-term strategy, you know, to either effectively or you know, partner with a logistics provider to handle that. Ultimately, the customer is going to have to pay for that service. Right now, you know, all the big VC and PE firms are paying for that. You know, Instacart still manages to lose money, you know, despite their mass number of customers and deliveries that they're doing and their four-sided revenue model that we've talked about on prior innovation conversations. You know, they're in a pretty good spot to build a really big, meaningful business. You know, arguably on the back of the existing industry infrastructure. But, you know, retailers really got to think about, you know, not letting those customers go. And I think in the Costco case, you know, knowing Costco, they see that as a customer that they, you know, that non-member customer that wants that on-demand delivery, they probably see that customer largely as one that this is incremental to them, that customer would have gone to another channel on that occasion. So this gives them an opportunity to keep that customer. They do need to consider though the main Costco trip and not having that erode over time, right? Keeping the membership for that and also supporting the you know, the volume that they get through the main Costco trip and not letting that, you know, erode to either Amazon, Instacart straight up shopping their stores where they get the volume, but they don't get the membership fee, you know, or any of a number of retailers that are getting way better, you know, way better at this.
So let's do we're talking mostly about consumer facing stuff. Let's do a little inside baseball question that came from somebody in the room. And the question was, will retailers adopt virtual engagement for tactical discussions with suppliers and limit face-to-face for more strategic top-to-top discussions? Virtually everybody in the room, this is the first time we're with people. Everybody's talked about, yeah, I haven't seen anybody in their offices forever. So let me ask that question of you first. Do you think that we will ever go back to what we would think of as the traditional, you know, sales call Or is that history at this point because we've discovered Microsoft Teams, Google Meets, and Zoom? How many people think we'll go back to the old way of doing things? You think we will? Anybody else? You think it'd be a hybrid? So we have one person who thinks it's going to go back. Some people it's going to be a hybrid. What do you think?
I think it'd be a hybrid. I do think that there's a lot to be said for face-to-face. You guys are all enjoying, I would imagine, being together. I know I have FOMO, not being there. So, I think there is something about that face-to-face. I think that, kind of like, think about like a business platform, kind of set of reporting and technology that can be used to guide, the kind of the product introduction and kind of planning and the various kind of transactional decisions that are made. I think the transactional stuff actually lends itself really well, particularly to AI and machine learning supported interaction. I think that can be really good. I think that can ultimately be a win for the better players on both the retailer and manufacturer side. But I do think that there's still an emotional piece, just like when we talk about appealing to a shopper and we talk about appealing to the shopper digitally as well as physically. I do think that there is something to physical engagement between brands/vendors and retailers that, if you can do it right, create the right venues for that, that I think hybrid is ultimately, what will win the day.
So there's we're going to wrap up here. There's we've been doing a lot of work over the last 24 hours or so, and there's on one of the sheets in the back of the room, there's a comment about retail stores that will not have any merchandise, which is interesting. I mean, there's been a couple of stories in the last couple of days about how Ralph Lauren is going, they're going to open stores, but you're going to go in, you're going to basically custom design your stuff, and they won't have any merchandise. That's essentially what Nordstrom Local is, right? There's stores without merchandise. And what you try on there is you've picked if you're going to try it on. So do you think that model has any kind of applicability for this industry? Stores that will virtually be, it's the opposite of dark stores, which have no customers and all merchandise. Will we have stores that will have all customers and no merchandise?
So like no merchandise, like zero merchandise, not so sure. But I do think that and we were up close in our portfolio. So we built a company called Bevy Up that was the support and automation platform for the in-store Nordstrom stylist. It ultimately sat under the Nordstrom Local concept, which enabled them to build kind of personalized assortments and connections, style guides, beauty boards with their customers, and enabled that customer then through this digital engagement to then come into a store or a Nordstrom Local shop, try on specific products brought to that shop for that customer, and then ultimately whittle down to the ultimate assortment that they bought. In some cases, they'd take it home. In other cases, they would have it delivered. So in the fashion industry, it works great. I think if you think about things like the beauty counter and how that capability could support the beauty counter, awesome. I think when you think into the grocery biz, particularly, or really any business that has packaged goods as a large portion of their volume and profit equation, I think a lot of that stuff can kind of fall into the background, and you don't necessarily have to have as much of the traditional kind of shelf edge experience, that you've had in traditional retail. There still will be product discovery, though, I do think, that will happen at the retailer. But you may not need to walk up to 4 or 6 facings of a product to experience it. It may be more either kind of kiosk based or demo based, right? You might find a new model where we're actually doing more sampling in store, those kinds of things. So I do think the kind of rote purchasing, the stuff that we've made customers kind of work hard for, walking up and down aisles or reaching into cases and whatnot to get products. I think a lot of that stuff will automate and go into the background. And then kind of front of store or front of counter will be a lot more about education and experience and sensory. So I think that our industry actually sets up well for that, probably even better, frankly, than the fashion industry did.
So how many, last question for the audience. do you think in the next 5 years, we will see either a national or a regional retailer, somebody of some heft, adopt a format that basically moves virtually all of center store into a virtual environment and then focuses the store itself, the physical location, more on fresh? Does anybody think we'll see a major retailer do that? One. Anybody else? Two, three. All right. People sort of, they were shy about putting up their hands. I agree. I agree. Okay, well, listen, we are out of time. You're there, so you're not going to be able to do what we're doing. We're going to go out and we're going to look at essential market, which is, boy, the very essence of experiential retailing. We're going to look at a container store today, which is the whole notion of, boy, really focusing in on one specific niche and then just doing a fabulous job and creating experience all of its own. So, but you're not here, so I'll report back, Tom.
I'll miss you guys, but I'll be at the next one, and I would encourage everyone watching this to get to a Retail Tomorrow event. They're amazing.
Okay. Well, that is the Innovation Conversation. Thank you all for watching. I'm Kevin Coop.
And I'm Tom Furphy.
We'll see you next time, everybody. Give yourself a round of applause.